The great hall of Eloria glittered with banners of crimson and gold, their silken folds rippling in the draught of the high windows. The council had gathered in full force, lords in velvet cloaks, merchants in their jeweled rings, generals in polished steel. But the air was not one of unity. It was heavy, charged, like the sky before a storm. At the center, upon the throne of carved obsidian, sat Queen Seraphina. Her crown gleamed, but her eyes were sharper still, fixed upon the faces of those who whispered behind closed doors. She knew, and today she would force the truth into the light. Prince Kalen entered late, striding with the confidence of a man who believed destiny itself bent to his will. The council bowed lightly, some more reluctant than others, but Kalen merely dipped his head as if acknowledging equals rather than his queen. "Brother," Seraphina said, her voice carrying across the chamber, "you arrive as though the crown waits upon your leisure." A ripple of uneasy laughter spread through the hall, but Kalen only smiled. "The matters I attend are no less important than those of the throne, sister." Seraphina's gaze sharpened. "Then perhaps you will share them with the council, so we may judge their worth." For the first time, Kalen faltered. His eyes flicked to the lords and merchants who had sworn themselves to him in secret. Silence stretched. Then, with a calculated breath, he stepped forward. "My queen, I fear the people grow restless. Taxes weigh heavy, harvests run thin, and rumors spread like wildfire. They do not see protection in shadows and whispers. They see weakness." A murmur surged through the council chamber. Some nodded, emboldened by Kalen's words. Others stiffened, watching Seraphina with wary eyes. She rose from her throne, tall and radiant, her cloak flowing like fire. "Weakness," her voice rang like a blade against steel. "It is weakness to sell our borders for coin. It is weakness to promise crowns in secret chambers. Do not mistake patience for fragility, brother. The people are not restless because of shadows. They are restless because traitors feed them poison." Gasps echoed through the hall. A lord shifted uncomfortably. A merchant's hand trembled upon his ring. Kalen's jaw tightened, but his mask remained. "You speak of betrayal," he said smoothly, "but where is your proof? Will you condemn your council with nothing but suspicion? Will you drag this kingdom into ruin on whispers alone?" The room crackled with tension. Allies glanced at one another, uncertain where the wind would turn. Seraphina stepped forward, her eyes sweeping the hall. "Proof?" Her voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "The proof walks among you, wearing loyalty as a cloak, while hiding daggers beneath." And with that, the great doors burst open. The silent wardens entered, hooded, unflinching, bearing scrolls, tokens, and letters seized from the conspirators. They laid them upon the council table for all to see. Kalen's smile finally broke. The storm had arrived. The council chamber was no longer a hall of unity, but a battlefield of words. Scrolls and letters lay scattered across the long table, each one dripping with betrayal. promises of gold, secret oaths, foreign seals pressed into wax. The air was thick with fear, pride, and anger. Half the council looked toward Queen Seraphina, their loyalty renewed by the undeniable evidence. The others shifted uneasily, their faces pale as the warden's proofs stripped them bare. Prince Kalen stood unmoved, though his eyes flickered with the sharp light of a cornered wolf. He placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. "So this is how you rule, sister?" he said, his voice soft but edged with venom. "By turning suspicion into spectacle, by parading fear through these halls until even the loyal cower? Is this strength, or is this desperation?" "Desperation?" Seraphina's voice rose, steady as thunder rolling across mountains. "No, brother, this is justice, and justice does not cower before liars." A lord rose from his seat, his jeweled fingers trembling. "Your Majesty," he began, his eyes darting between the siblings, "the realm cannot withstand division. If we splinter now, we invite ruin. Perhaps compromise." "Compromise?" Seraphina's gaze cut him down. "Shall we compromise with those who would see the throne shattered? With those who would sell Eloria's crown to the highest bidder?" Another counselor, one of Kalen's loyalists, stood abruptly. "And what of the people, your Majesty? They cry for bread while you chase shadows. Prince Kalen offers them hope. Hope bought with betrayal." Seraphina snapped. The chamber erupted. Voices clashed like swords. Accusations, defenses, and cries of treachery filled the air. The wardens stood ready, their hands upon their blades, waiting for the Queen's signal. Kalen raised his hand, and his supporters quieted. His eyes met Seraphina's, sharp with challenge. "Then let us no longer hide behind words. If you believe I am traitor, strip me of title here and now. Name me enemy before this council and before the gods." Gasps broke through the room. Such a demand was unthinkable. Naming a prince as traitor meant war. Seraphina took a slow step forward, her crown catching the firelight. Silence fell, heavy and breathless. "Kalen of Eloria," she said, her voice like ice over steel, "by my right as queen, I strip you of your claim to the throne. You are no prince, only a traitor who cloaks his ambition in falsehood." Chaos exploded. Some counselor shouted in protest, others cried their loyalty to the Queen. Swords rang as guards moved, dividing the chamber into two sides. And in that moment, the kingdom itself fractured. The breaking point had come. The city of Elindril, heart of Eloria, no longer pulsed with harmony. Its streets, once alive with merchant songs and children's laughter, now echoed with the marching of divided boots. Banners of gold and silver, the Queen's sigil, hung above the great avenues, but across the river, Scarlet flags, Kaelin's colors, fluttered defiantly in the wind. The kingdom had split. In the countryside, villages swore oaths to one sibling or the other. Some pledged to Seraphina, remembering her tireless defense against the raiders of the northern seas. Others bent to Kaelin, swayed by his promises of lower levies and bread for all. Brothers turned against brothers, fathers against sons. The wardens of truth scoured the land, rooting out Kaelin's conspirators. But for every traitor unmasked, another rose in his place. Shadows spread faster than the Queen's light could chase them. In the council chamber, Seraphina's allies urged caution. "My Majesty," Lord Brennar warned, "to strike too swiftly risks shattering what remains of unity. Yet to wait is to give Kaelin strength." Seraphina's eyes burned with sleepless fire. "If I falter now, the realm dies. We must act, not wait." Meanwhile, Kaelin stood before his own assembly in a fortress seized along the Scarlet Hills. His voice carried like a blade, sharp and unyielding. "My sister crowns herself with justice, but she wears the mask of tyranny. Will you kneel to chains, or will you rise with me to claim the freedom that is ours by right?" Cheers shook the hall, swords raised high. His cause was no longer whispers, it was an army. At night, spies clashed in the alleys of Elindrel. Assassins crept through courtyards, seeking throats in the dark. The Queen's supporters painted her name upon walls, only for Kaelin's rebels to smear it in blood-red paint by dawn. The kingdom teetered at the edge of a blade. And in the silence between the cries of war, Seraphina walked the palace halls alone, whispering to herself, "Father, had you foreseen this, that your crown would turn your children into enemies?" Beyond the palace, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from the drums of war. The shadows of civil war had fallen. The dawn broke red over the Scarlet Hills, as if the sky itself bled in omen. Mist clung to the valleys, muffling the sound of marching boots, until the earth began to quake with their weight. On one side stood the banners of Queen Seraphina, golden phoenixes embroidered on white silk, fluttering above disciplined lines of soldiers. The royal guard gleamed in polished steel, their shields locked, their spears steady. At their heart rode Seraphina herself, armored not as a sovereign, but as a warrior, her blade moonfire catching the light of the rising sun. Across the field, Kaelin's forces assembled, a mass of farmers turned fighters, mercenaries bought with promises of coin, and deserters who had sworn new loyalty. Their banners bore the crimson wolf, snarling, wild. Though less trained, their spirit burned fierce. At their center, Kaelin rode a black steed, his armor darker than midnight, his voice carrying over the wind. "Today," he shouted, We tear down the false crown. Today, freedom is written in blood. A roar answered him, rolling across the hills like thunder. The first horn sounded. Arrows darkened the sky, whistling death. Shields rose, but cries split the air as men fell. The two armies surged forward, colliding in a storm of iron and flesh. The clash was deafening, steel on steel, screams of rage, the crunch of bone beneath horses' hooves. Seraphina cut through the melee like fire through dry grass. Her blade shimmered, each strike precise, each movement born of years of training. Around her, her guard fought to keep the queen alive, but she needed no saving. Kailung too carved his path through the chaos, his greatsword blood-fang swinging wide, felling 3 men with a single arc. His presence was a storm, drawing his soldiers forward with each strike. At last, the siblings' eyes met across the battlefield. For a heartbeat, all else seemed to fade, the clash, the screams, the stench of death. Only brother and sister, 2 heirs bound by love, yet torn by war. "Kylan!" Seraphina's voice rose above the fray, desperate and fierce. "This madness ends before it consumes us all." Her brother's reply was a snarl, his blade raised. "No, sister, it begins." They charged. Steel met steel, sparks flew. The first duel of the siblings, not in the secrecy of halls, but before the eyes of thousands, began. By day's end, the fields of the Scarlet Hills were drenched in blood, the first true battle of the Civil War. And though neither sibling fell, Aeloria would never be the same.
The Scarlet Hills still wept with the blood of the fallen when Queen Seraphina returned to Aeloria's capital. The bells tolled in mourning, yet behind the walls of the Silver Keep whispers grew louder than grief. At first it was small things, the disappearance of supplies from the royal granaries, coded letters intercepted before reaching trusted allies. Then came the rumors. Kaelin knew the queen's movements before they were made, his ambushes timed too perfectly to be chance. Seraphina's council grew restless. Some pointed fingers at the generals, others at the court nobles. The queen herself remained silent, though her eyes lingered longer on those who once swore eternal loyalty. One evening, as torchlight flickered across the stone halls, a shadow moved where none should be. Captain Elric, sworn protector of the queen, followed the sound of hushed voices to the council chamber. Inside, he found Lord Dorian, the queen's most trusted advisor, bent over a map with a hooded messenger. Their words were sharp, their intent unmistakable. "The queen grows weaker," Dorian hissed. "Each battle bleeds her kingdom dry. Tell Kaelin the eastern gates will be unguarded come the next moon. He must strike swiftly." Elric's hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. Betrayal, born not of loyalty to Kaelin's cause, but of ambition. Dorian sought power no crown could grant him. But before Elric could act, the hooded figure vanished into the night, carrying the secret with him. Dorian straightened his robes, slipping back into the role of faithful servant, never knowing he had been overheard. That night, Elric wrestled with a soldier's curse, duty to truth or duty to peace. To accuse a noble of treason without proof would fracture the fragile unity holding the court together. Yet silence would mean doom. When dawn came, Seraphina stood upon her balcony, gazing at the wounded city. Behind her, Elric knelt, his voice heavy. "My queen, there are vipers in the shadows, and one of them drinks from your very table." Seraphina turned slowly, her eyes as hard as steel. "Then let the serpent coil, for when it strikes, we shall cut off its head." Unseen by both, Lord Dorian smiled in the depths of the keep, his schemes already in motion. The war would not be decided by swords alone, but by daggers in the dark.
The moon hung low over Aeolia as the enemy banners appeared on the horizon. Kaelin's army, black as a storm, marching toward the capital. The traitors' whispers had borne fruit. The gates of Dawnspire, Aeolia's strongest fortress, stood undermanned. Drums of war thundered through the night. Torches blazed like rivers of fire across the plains. The people of Aeolia gathered in silence behind their queen, fear shadowing every face. Seraphina rode at the head of her knights, her silver crown gleaming in the firelight. Though her body carried the wounds of past battles, her spirit blazed brighter than ever. "Tonight," she cried, her voice carrying across the walls, "we fight not only for land, nor for crown. We fight for every song yet unsung, every child yet unborn, every dream that must not burn." The soldiers roared as the first wave crashed upon the walls. Arrows darkened the skies, steel clashed against steel, and the night became a furnace of blood and fire. In the chaos, Elric fought like a lion at the queen's side, his sword flashing against countless foes. Yet even as victory seemed possible, betrayal struck. The eastern gate, as foretold, burst open from within. Lord Dorian, cloaked in treachery, led Kaelin's vanguard through the breach. But Seraphina had foreseen this. She had let the serpent coil, and now she struck. "Dorian!" she thundered across the battlefield, her blade raised high. "For your treachery you shall wear no crown but chains." Before he could answer, Elric's sword pierced the traitor's chest. Dorian gasped, his ambitions dying with him, as the gates were sealed once more. The battle raged till dawn. Kaelin himself rode forward, black armor glinting red. He and Seraphina met beneath the burning sky, two destinies colliding. Their swords clashed like thunder, sparks flew, each strike a storm. Kaelin's strength was brutal, but Seraphina fought with something greater, faith in her people. At last, with a final cry, she drove her blade through his dark crown. Kaelin fell, his shadow lifted from the land. When the sun rose, the battlefield was still. The banners of Aeolia fluttered in the morning wind. The people wept, not in sorrow, but in triumph. Seraphina stood upon the walls of Dawnspire, bloodied but unbroken. The queen who had been doubted, betrayed, and hunted by darkness now stood as the flame of hope reborn. Her kingdom was scarred, but alive, and as long as she lived, its heart would never fade. Thus ended the War of Crowns, Aeolia's darkest night and its brightest dawn.